What would you do if your brother stole your throne, your wife, your entire world? For one man, the answer was simple: unleash a firestorm so devastating that it would reduce his kingdom to ashes. This is part 6 of the true story of Oba Ewuare, the Benin king who burnt his own kingdom for revenge. This is a story of love, betrayal, and a fiery reckoning that changed African history forever. Prince Ogun arrived at Umuoho Idunwo, seeking the aid of his cousin, Azuwa, the powerful native doctor. "Cousin," Ogun said, with barely suppressed fury, "Uwaifioku has taken the throne, and he has made my wife, Ise, his prisoner." Beside Azuwa stood a young man, Okwaihe. His eyes blazed with an unsettling power. Okwaihe was Azuwa's apprentice, and a gifted young man who wielded magic unlike anything you had ever seen. Without a word, Azuwa led Ogun to his hut. The prince was physically tired, but his spirit burned with purpose. He recounted everything to his cousin, including his brother's treachery, the stolen throne, the captive bride, and the narrow escape. Azuwa listened intently, then bowed his head, muttering a low incantation. When he looked up, his eyes were grave. "The throne is within your grasp," he said, "but the path is fraught with peril, and the price will be heavy." Ogun nodded grimly. He was prepared to pay any price. "You cannot face Uwaifioku's army alone," Azuwa continued. "Take my apprentice Okwai here. His magic, though still untrained, will be your shield." Ogun, knowing he faced a vicious army, accepted their offer without hesitation. "Then gather our allies," he commanded. We marched to Obinu at dawn. His brother had a vicious army of trained soldiers, and he knew he could not fight them by himself. So he asked Azuwa to go to Kiagbodo, his wife's village, and rally supporters. Azuwa agreed. So the next morning, each party set off, one to the north and the others to the south. When Prince Ogun and the apprentice arrived at Obinu, they were shocked to see how destitute the land had become. Rumors had reached them of Obinu's plight, but nothing could have prepared them for the devastation that greeted them upon arrival. While the villagers were suffering with no food nor water to drink, high above in the palace grounds, there was celebration with music playing. The Uzama nobles and the people in the palace were celebrating Oba Uwaifioku's marriage to his new bride. Prince Ogun and Okwaihe went to the market to search for Emota. It was from her that he learned about the death of Edo, his loyal servant. Prince Ogun was enraged. He couldn't believe how selfish and greedy his brother was. The wedding celebration was a 7-day festivity, and Prince Ogun decided he would wait for his cousin to bring supporters before they would begin their attack. 3 days later, Azuwa returned with Prince Ogun's supporters. The small army hid themselves by the wall of Obinu and waited for the prince's signal. As nighttime fell, Prince Ogun brought out his talisman and used it to set large parts of the palace on fire. When the royal guards noticed that the palace was engulfed in flames, they ran to guard Oba Uwaifioku and his new bride. The wedding guests screamed in fear as they rushed out of the palace in panic. The flames grew wilder and wilder, dancing like wildfire. It climbed higher than the palace walls, devouring everything in their path. They spread beyond Ubinu, spilling into the villages of the kingdom, leaving destruction in their wake. No one in Benin had ever witnessed such devastation. Palace servants and the royal army poured sand and water to stop this fire. But the more they tried to douse the fire, the more it grew. It grew so wild that it spread to the north and south part of the capital. The fire was impossible to tame. Oba Uwaifioku suspected that this was no ordinary fire, but his brother, who had come back to take his revenge. So he called on his war general to rally the troops and prepare them for war. Prince Ogun took advantage of the chaos and smoke to run to the prison caves. There he saw his wife shackled to the prison walls, coughing from the smoke made by the magic fire. He set her free and carried her on his shoulders. As they moved towards the door, the walls suddenly caved in, trapping them inside the prison. But the prince did not waste time. He took out his talisman and removed the powdery substance. He threw the powdery substance at the wall and it slithered open, making a way for them to escape out into the open. But as they scrambled out, they found themselves face to face with Oba Uwaifioku and his guards. He sniggered as he saw his brother carrying his wife. "Drop my wife," he commanded, but Prince Ogun refused. "Let's settle this once and for all, brother." The prince brought out his machete. "Whoever wins will be the ruler of Benin Kingdom," the Oba howled. "You know I can't fight you. We all know you're a better fighter than I am. But it is my men who will fight and defeat you." Before the prince could react, the Oba's furious command rang out. "Kill her," he said. In that same instant, Ogun's eyes caught the glint of an arrow from the treetops. But it was too late. The arrow struck Isen's heart, and a strangled cry lodged in Ogun's throat as she collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Prince Ogun's heart pounded in disbelief. He lunged at his brother, fury tearing from his throat. But the royal guards moved swiftly, forming an impenetrable wall around the Oba. Firelight flickered across the polished shields of Uwaifioku's soldiers as they slammed into him, locking tight and forcing him away from Ise's lifeless body. Grief and rage surged within him. His fury was fueled by the inferno around him. The heat bit into his skin. It was a scorching reminder of the destruction his anger had wrought. Prince Ogun roared a sound of pure fury as he slammed furiously into Uwaifioku's guards. They came at him in a wave of steel, 3 at a time, but none could withstand his wrath. Each swing of his machete was fueled by grief and vengeance, cutting down those who dared stand between him and his brother. Ogun fought like a cornered leopard, but for every soldier he cut down, 3 more rose to take their place. Exhaustion was gnawing at him, and his breath was coming in ragged gasps. He knew he couldn't hold out much longer. With a desperate roar, he ripped out a fire-starting charm from his talisman and flung it into the sky. It burst into a brilliant red flare, a signal to his waiting allies. Almost instantly, figures emerged from the burning undergrowth surrounding Ubinu. Battle cries echoed as Obo's reinforcements charged into the battle. Leading the charge was Ewuare, Azowa's apprentice. He leapt from the blazing bush, and the other sword was blazing in his hand. His face was smeared with soot, but his eyes burned with fierce determination. Though the fire raged around them, blackening the sky with smoke, Ewuare and the Kiagbodo warriors were undeterred. They carved a path through the flames, their weapons a blur of motion, crashing into Uwaifioku's startled ranks. Together they pushed back the Oba's army, turning the tide of the battle. Ewuare threw the Ada sword to the prince, and as soon as Ogo grabbed a hold of it, more power surged through him, encouraging him to fight even harder. He met the eyes of Uwaifioku's remaining guards, no longer seeing mindless soldiers, but traitors to the true heir. And in their wavering gazes, he saw fear take root. Oba Uwaifioku, cowering behind his ranks, realized with terror that his men were no match for Ogu's righteous fury. So desperate was he to see his brother fall that he reached for a final cowardly solution. With a mix of fear and malice, Uwaifioku pointed a shaking finger at Ise's body. "Look at her. A shame you weren't here to protect her. But don't despair, brother. I'll make sure your next bride receives the same tender care." At that moment, Ogun saw red. He plunged his hand into his pouch, pulling out a feathered arrow, its tip black with poison. With a roar that echoed across the courtyard, he let it fly, and it found its mark, sinking deep into Ewuare's chest. The Oba's eyes widened, a flicker of fear finally crossing his face, before he crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Oba Ewuare's reign was finally over. The royal army, seeing their leader dead, dropped their weapons and knelt before Prince Ogun, calling him their true king. With Ewuare and Azua at his side, Prince Ogun walked into the palace, not as a fugitive, but as a conquering hero. His coronation day was swift and decisive, and he was crowned Oba Ewuare. The people of Benin, tired of Ewuare's tyranny and inspired by the Oba's courage, hailed him as their rightful ruler. He became the Oba of Benin Kingdom. But Oba Ewuare's justice extended beyond rewards. He knew the Uzama chieftains who had supported Ewuare's treacherous reign could not be trusted. Their betrayal had cost Ise her life and brought the kingdom to the brink of ruin. In a solemn ceremony held in the market square, the Uzama chieftains who had sided with Ewuare were held accountable for their treason. Their execution served as a stark reminder that loyalty and justice were the cornerstone of the Oba's reign. Thus began the rule of Oba Ewuare, a reign that was marked by both strength and compassion. And as he looked over his kingdom, Oba Ewuare knew the true work of rebuilding Benin Kingdom to its former glory had only just begun.